Speaking with reporters in Iowa today, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said Canada would need to drop its retaliatory trade measures against the U.S. products to avoid new 50% tariffs, which are set to take effect next week. Let's bring in former Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole for more on this. Mr. O'Toole, it's great to have you join us. Thanks so much.
Good to be with you, Lindsay.
So if you take Greer at his word that the U.S. would respond to Canadian retaliatory tariffs by imposing even more aggressive trade restrictions, would it be wiser at this point for Canada to step back rather than retaliate?
Well, the government already has stepped back from some of the retaliation that was done under Prime Minister Trudeau. The only things that really remains are some quotas with respect to non-CUSMA compliant autos and the alcohol decisions made by not all of the provinces, but by most of the provinces in terms of U.S. Alcohol sales. So Canada really hasn't responded in a massive way, and I think the trade representative should acknowledge that. But the Americans have been unreasonable on the tariff issue from the start, and so it's not something we expect to change. We just have to drive a deal that's in both countries' interests.
Yeah, because the U.S. Trade Representative, he also said he doesn't view this as a trade war, but rather an effort to protect and strengthen domestic supply chains. What's your reaction to that?
Well, the first Trump administration talked about supply chain concerns with China on everything from steel, aluminum. That's when the original use of tariffs, 232 security tariffs, the first time were used, and everything right down to EVs and critical minerals, rare earths. Canada was slow to respond to that concern about the global competition between the United States and China. That was the first Trump administration, the NAFTA renegotiation. That's not the case now. Canada is very serious, aligned on general tariffs with respect to Chinese commodities. We're also aligned on defense spending, critical minerals, and supplying the U.S. with some of those key materials for rearming in this dangerous geopolitical world. So I do think they're still really griping over complaints about Canada from a few years ago. And I really hope the trade representative and the Trump administration look at the changes made in the last year and a half. The Carney government is certainly very different from the Trudeau government. I can say that as someone that ran against Justin Trudeau and was saying many of the things that I had concerns about that Prime Minister Carney has addressed. So I hope we can make a deal, but right now the sides are still a bit apart, and our negotiators want a good deal for Canadian workers, and they're going to drive for that.
So the best response then, maybe at this point, would be for Canada to continue investing domestically while also diversifying its trading partners. Do you think?
I've always said the goal should be twofold: diversify so that we're never overly exposed and completely dependent on another partner like the U.S. But at the same time, we should have a secondary strategy of trying to repair as well as possible the Canada-U.S. relationship, which actually since World War II was the example to the world in terms of trade, in terms of security, what we did on NATO, what we did on NORAD, what we did with the Auto Pact in the 1960s. The first free trade in the world really was between Canada and the U.S. on a large scale. So how can we make sure we repair that, but be a little bit more independent, self-reliant, and grow new markets in Europe, in Southeast Asia, the Indo-Pacific? And I think the Carney government is trying to do both.
The Canadian side has seemingly made it clear that it views this August 19th deadline as a kind of cliff type moment. I wonder what you make of that approach. Is it really like a do or die moment? Is there too much risk in prolonging trade uncertainty any further? What do you think?
Well, it is a cliff of sorts in that the 338 tariffs, and I think it's important for your viewers who are very well informed to realize this is a new set of tariffs that the president had threatened almost a month ago. The 338 tariffs would hit tens of thousands of more jobs in our economy, potentially reduce our GDP by almost 0.5%, which is a huge hit, $16 to $20 billion on an economy like Canada. And so these are new tariffs. These are more provocative action by the Trump administration. So I do think we have to fight as hard as we can against them, try and make a deal to not just stop the 338 tariffs from being applied, but also look at some of the 232 steel and aluminum tariffs So I support what they're doing. I think they're driving for an agreement. And if we do go over the cliff, sadly, it will mean Canada has to retaliate in a more substantive way. And that's unfortunately why tariffs are such a archaic approach to modern economies. And I know Trade Representative Greer remembers this from when he was in law school and when he was a trade lawyer earlier in his career, like I was. I hope some common sense prevails in the next few days.
If the U.S. decided to maybe extend the tariff deadline, but Canada still didn't secure a new trade deal, would you consider that a win for Canada?
I think that we have to look at where we're going to land just before August 19th. So the first couple of days of next week, we will have to see, can we reach some sort of deal? There's a famous expression about deadlines in diplomacy. The trouble with deadlines is that nothing happens until the deadline, right? Both sides are trying to hold their positions. And no one's really driving towards a bargain until the final hours or my law days, until you're on the courthouse steps coming to some sort of agreement. But I think we have set the expectation that Canada will unfortunately be forced to respond to this new round of 338 tariffs. The irony, Lindsay, is these tariffs are almost 100 years old, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. And what happened last time, 100 years ago, is that Canada responded, and the Great Depression became even deeper and longer as a result of tariffs. So they hurt both sides. There will be pain for Canada, but if we can't drive a deal, I think we'll have to stand tall and push back.
Just lastly, I wanted to ask, because being a former trade lawyer, being the former Conservative Party leader, I'm very curious. If you were leading the party that was in power during these trade talks, how would you have approached negotiations? Would you have done anything differently?
I have to say that I actually respect Prime Minister Carney's job. And I'm not just saying that because he put me on the Trade Advisory Council. Everything from what we're doing in the Arctic, meeting the 2% military NATO spending target within a year, these were all moves that the Conservatives, when I was leader, pushed for. So Mr. Carney has certainly reset the policy tone in Ottawa. And I also do think that despite President Trump's rhetoric on some occasions, I do think he has made a more professional relationship with the Americans. And we're going to need that, because if the negotiators can get their deal, Ms. Charette and the USTR, we will also have to have that deal approved by the president. And I think the Prime Minister has built a respectful, serious, and relationship of peers that Canada needs to stand up for ourselves. And I think we're doing that in a responsible way.
Okay, we will leave it there then. Former Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole joining us. I really appreciate your time, Mr. O'Toole. Thank you.